Isaiah chapter 10, beginning at verse 1, reading from the New International Version, you'll find these words have been recorded. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees. I'm going to stop there. I'm sorry. To deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people. Somebody shout, woe. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people. I want to talk to you from this thought of one big unbeautiful bill. You may be seated in the presence of God. I've got to be honest with you. I'm beyond tired. It's a tired that sleep and rest can't cure. I'm beyond tired. I'm beyond tired of watching elected officials who swore an oath to protect life, liberty, and justice play political games with people's lives. I'm beyond tired. I'm tired of watching the president and his administration on one side of Pennsylvania Avenue and his enablers on Capitol Hill on the other, treating working families like the elderly and the sick and people who are disabled, treating them like bargaining chips in some high-stakes game of cruelty. Ladies and gentlemen, please hear me when I share this with you, that what took place on Friday with that signing, and even before that, the Project 2025 bill, because that's all it is. This isn't policy, it's punishment. This isn't leadership, it's legalized suffering. And I know I'm not the only one tired of watching our people bleed while politicians boast. Once again, America has passed not a bill of progress, but a policy of punishment. And the reason I say that is because you have to watch how this president operates. It's no different than what he did his first 4 years. And let me pause parenthetically and share to those who may be watching in the virtual church, and even some of you who have the mindset that the pastor should not be talking about those things, just preach Jesus. Let me offer something to you about who Jesus is. Jesus was very rooted and engaged in policy and politics and government. And so for the preacher not to speak on these things would be a dereliction of our calling. Again, let me just say, when you look at the president of these yet to be United States, just notice it's never about policy for him, it's about punishment. It's never about let's try to see how we can work together. It's all about revenge. And so this new law is not a law of liberty, but it's a decree of domination. They're calling it one big beautiful bill, but there is nothing beautiful about this bill. On July 3rd, the bill passed its final hurdle when Congress voted along party lines to support this weapon of mass destruction. And the current president, who, by the way, openly admitted that he and his former boo stole the election. Y'all know who his former boo is, right? This president, who openly admitted that they stole the election, signed the bill into law on July 4th. If you've read the significant portions of the bill, because it's a long bill, but if you've read the significant portions of the bill, it's easy, ladies and gentlemen, to decode how it comes dressed in deception. It is wrapped in stars and stripes, and it is marketed like it's a miracle. But when you look beneath the surface, when you open the package, what you find is the same old poison, much slicker this time, but just as toxic, because this bill does not serve the people. It does not lift those who are economically poor. This bill does not protect the elders. And with the potential to add over $300 trillion to the debt, I dare say it doesn't protect all Americans. If you're unaware of this bill and you've just been hearing about it and hearing people rant and rave about it, or even want me to stop ranting and raving about it, I'm not. Here it is. This bill blesses billionaires and burdens the broken. This bill advances corporations and abandons communities. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm shocked, because we've seen this before. This isn't new. Can I tell you something about history? History may not repeat itself verbatim, but it sure does rhyme with precision. When governments turn against their people, when policies become instruments of punishment, and when the halls of power echo with the cries of vulnerability, let me teach you something here. God does not stay silent. God does not stand back. God steps in. God speaks up. Someone may be asking, why didn't God speak up then? But don't worry about it. I got an answer for it. God speaks up. And when God speaks, God doesn't use a diplomat, and God does not use a spin doctor. What happens is that God raises up a prophet. And right here in Isaiah 10, we are introduced to a prophet who dared to speak truth to power. Now, before we deal with the times we're living in, I want you to take a moment to stand in the shadow of Isaiah and hear what God said to the empire then, because it's got something to say to the empire now. Let me take you to the book here, because God commissioned Isaiah to confront a nation that had lost its moral compass. Sound familiar? A people who had legalized injustice and normalized greed. Does that sound familiar? And Isaiah opens his mouth to the oppressors with a single word, or what I like to call a divine warning, if you please. He opened it up with one word that said, woe. Woe. Now, the woe is not as we understand it in woe, like, whoa, stop. No, this word is different, and I don't want you to skip past the power of this one word, because that word woe in Hebrew, can I teach you something? It's not a casual complaint. That word woe is a cry of divine protest and divine judgment. In biblical Hebrew, hoy, H-O-Y, hoy, was used by prophets, and hoy is translated into woe. It was used by prophets when God had had enough. You do know God does get fed up, right? You do know that God does have an insult level. You do know that there are some things that can happen that will finally make God say, I've had enough, and now I must intervene. The prophets used the word hoy, or woe. God had enough. They use it when justice had been perverted, when the powerful trample the poor, and when leaders use their position to promote oppression. It's really a word of righteous rage and spiritual warning. If you go and look at Amos uses the word woe. Amos, who said, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. You'll see where Micah used the word. Micah, what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to love God, and to walk humbly with our God, to love mercy rather, and walk humbly with our God. And it's what Isaiah used here as he was crying out, woe. And he said it because judgment is coming. And if I can continue educating you before the celebration, Isaiah isn't whispering this word, he's weeping it. He's actually shouting it. He's pronouncing divine disapproval upon those who legislate suffering, who codify cruelty, and who make oppression the law of the land. So when Isaiah says, woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, he's talking to lawmakers. He's talking to the empire. And here's the tragedy. The empire dares to invoke God's name while doing the devil's work. It drapes injustice in religious language, baptizes greed in patriotic slogans, and use bully pulpits to protect power. But I want you to be clear about something. The God of the empire is not the God we serve. People can say we serve the same God if they want to, and that's a tale. We don't serve the same God. Their God demands loyalty to the nation over love for your neighbor. Their God blesses the powerful and blames the struggling. But our God, I'm talking about the true and living God, is a God of justice, a God who hears the cries of the hurting, a God who delivers the oppressed and holds the powerful accountable. While the empire builds systems to crush, our God builds movements to liberate. While they legislate suffering, our God leads us towards freedom. And just like Isaiah, I stand here to declare, woe. Woe. A divine judgment. Woe to the president and both houses of Congress who voted to cut SNAP by nearly $300 billion over the next 10 years. And you may not understand the severity in that, but the cutting of over $300 billion over the next 10 years is stripping food from the tables of families who already have to ration their meals. I stand here to say woe to the lawmakers who wrapped up that cruelty in red tape, shifting the cost to the states, putting food security at risk, watch this, for children, elders, and people with disabilities. I stand here to say woe to the ones who passed a law that makes Medicaid harder to qualify for, harder to enroll in, and even harder to keep, cutting off access to care in a country already drowning in medical debt. Can I help you with something? The whole piece with Medicare has nothing to do with trying to cut funds. It has to do with the fact that it will affect the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is called Obamacare, and the reason why Trump did it is because he continues to live in the shadow of President Obama, because he has a problem not measuring up. So he would rather cut Medicare to hurt children, elders, people with disabilities. I stand here to say woe. Woe to those who are slashing federal payments to hospitals and nursing homes. You may not think this is a big deal, but I want to make sure that you understand how this law works, ladies and gentlemen, because nursing homes will begin to close, because many in nursing homes have Medicaid. Whoa! Even our loved ones laying in beds waiting for cure. You keep hearing when it says that many people will die because they don't have health care. I stand here to say woe. Woe to the architects of this bill, because you do understand the president wasn't smart enough to do this himself. He is the epitome of a puppet. And those who we don't see are the puppet masters. They're the architects of the bill. And they're gutting Medicare assistance. They're halting protections that make nursing homes safer and stripping away these subsidies that help low-income seniors afford prescriptions. And they do it while, didn't I tell y'all, start off by telling y'all I'm tired? They do it while smiling and calling it reform. It's not reform, it's regression in disguise. It's oppression by design. It's state-sanctioned cruelty masquerading as policy. This bill isn't about protecting America, it's about controlling it. Isaiah saw this spirit long ago and he said, woe. But notice, not to the people who are crushed under the decree, but to the ones who wrote it, not to the suffering, but to the senators, not to the broken, but to the builders of brokenness. And again, I've come to join that ancient cry, not as a politician, but as a preacher of righteousness. Woe, woe, woe to the ones who weaponize legislation to starve the people. Woe to those who gut health care and call it fiscal discipline. Woe to the hands that pen injustice and hide behind procedure. Woe, because God still sees. Woe, because heaven still has the last word. Woe, because this world still belongs to the one who defends the widow, the orphan, the stranger, and the sick. Woe to the very people who wrote this big, unbeautiful bill. And beloved, I just need you to understand, this is not a social analysis. It really is a spiritual indictment. God is not neutral when policy causes pain. And God even says, woe. And here's the part that cuts deep. Some of the very people most devastated by this bill, the same families who will lose the most, voted for it. They showed up at the polls. They lifted their voices. They raised their flags. They walked around proud with their red hats on their head. They cast their ballots for the same people who would now sell them out. Can I push this a little bit further? And I'm not only talking about many white people who folks think, I'm talking about, there are some folks who think they're white. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. I'm trying to say something without saying it. Because there are some who think they're white. But more directly, I'm also talking about the sellout Negroes who believe the words of the civil rights song, "We shall overcome," has been changed to "we have overcome," just because we have some proximity, but they're too whitewashed to realize that proximity doesn't equal to power. And they are on social media platforms celebrating a bill that's going to actually kill their grandparents. And I don't know about you, but I don't have time to talk about the other minoritized groups who felt they were exempt, but they're the main target of this bill. I'll say it again. Some of the very people most devastated by this bill, the same families will lose the most. They voted for it, and here it is, not because they didn't care about their lives, but because they hated ours. Listen, there are people who are so deeply invested in whiteness, so addicted to the illusion of supremacy, that they will burn down their house just to make sure we can't stand on the porch. They would rather suffer themselves than see black folks succeed. They would rather lose their health care, lose their jobs, lose their homes, just to make sure we don't get a fair shot. But here's something else that makes me a little tickled, though. They voted thinking they were exempt, only to find out that every non-color ain't your kind either. And they voted thinking it would destroy us, but look at them now. They are on social media talking about, "I feel bad. I shouldn't have voted. He turned his back on us." When has anybody that was rich ever gave a darn about anybody that was poor? me tell y'all something. That's not politics. That's pathology. When your identity is equality feels like oppression. And when you've been fed a lie that your skin is your salvation, you'll follow anyone who promises to keep you on top, even if it means sinking the whole ship. How do I know? Here's my argument. We saw it in the backlash to Reconstruction. We saw it in Jim Crow. We saw it after the Obama presidency. And we're seeing it again right now. This is not about party. It is about power. It's about a system that teaches people to blame those whom they feel are beneath them rather than questioning those above them. Because while they're so busy hating us, billionaires are cashing in. The ultra wealthy are laughing all the way to the bank. They're writing checks behind closed doors. Trust me when I tell you, I'm too involved in this thing. They're writing checks behind closed doors. They're pouring money already into campaigns. And when the smoke clears, they reap the benefits while we bear the burden. They pay less in taxes while we pay more at the grocery store. They get bailouts while we get budget cuts. They profit from our pain and then convince working class white folks to turn their anger toward us instead of the billionaires who actually robbed them. Let me say it plainly. They hate us so much they're willing to hurt themselves. And that's how the devil works. That's the devil's deception. That's spiritual warfare. That's a demonic distortion of truth, love, and neighborliness. But here's what they forgot. Here's what America never quite seems to remember, and I've been preaching it for over 20 years. Black folks are resilient. I wish I had a witness here. Black folks are resilient. Newsflash, we've survived worse than this. We've endured plantations and poll taxes. We've made miracles in the middle of massacres. We've built joy in the shadow of lynching trees. Listen, baby, we done learned a whole new line dance, boots on the ground, while watching white folks lose their minds over the mistake they made in November. We've taken the very tools meant to kill us and used them to create new life because we know something about pain, but we also know something about resurrection. We know what it means to hang on Friday and still rise on Sunday. We know that every act meant to erase us actually becomes a seed God plants for something greater. And that's why James Cone told the truth when he said in The Cross and the Lynching Tree that the cross can heal and hurt. It can redeem and condemn. And it is precisely in this paradox that is found its meaning, because they crucified Jesus not because he was meek and mild, but because he was radical and righteous, because he loved. Can I stop there for a minute? I got to hurry up here. But see, that's why a lot of them love Jesus. They love the part about Jesus that says turn the other cheek. But they don't realize that when Jesus was saying turn the other cheek, Jesus wasn't saying it because he was being meek and mild. Jesus was saying turn the other cheek because if you don't and they slap you again, you have permission to go ahead and do what you need to do. I get so sick and tired of people painting Jesus like Jesus was a pacifist. There wasn't nothing passive about Jesus. Jesus was a radical. Jesus was a soldier. Jesus was radical and righteous. They got mad at Jesus because he loved the poor, but then he walked up in their temple and flipped the tables. They got mad at Jesus because he challenged the empire. That got mad at Jesus because he cast demons into their swines. The swines died, and Jesus affected the economy because they depended on those pigs to make their money. money, and Jesus destroyed their economy. That's why they wanted to kill Jesus, because he dared to say little things like, the last shall be first. Jesus, here it is, died at the hands of an unholy alliance between religion and state, between politicians and priests, between Caesar and the clergy. Does that sound familiar? If it doesn't sound familiar, let me help you. They tried to kill Jesus and weren't successful because Jesus decided to die. But what they didn't know was that in Jesus' death, God was planting a seed, because that's how resurrection works. It's how God moves. Every time they try to bury us, God raises us. Every time they try to crush us, God multiplies us. My God, today, every time they pass one big unbeautiful bill, God writes one big beautiful response and calls it resistance, resilience, and resurrection. And so the question then becomes, well, you just said all of that. What do we do? What do we do, Pastor? What do we do? You're standing in the place of a prophet. What do we do? Let me tell you what we do. We organize, we vote, we speak truth in boardrooms and barbershops. Okay, you missed your shout. There it is. What do? We organize, we vote, we speak truth in boardrooms and barbershops. We build coalitions that can't be broken. We teach our children the truth that schools won't. We build economic power that can't be bought. We invest in each other. We feed each other. We educate each other. We protect each other. We don't wait for no savior from Washington to save us. We remember that God has already equipped us, just as he equipped Moses before Pharaoh, just as he stood with Esther in the palace, and just as he empowered David before Goliath. Because the battle, ladies and gentlemen, is not just political, it's also spiritual. And I'm here to offer that if God be for us, who can be against us? Wait a minute, let me ask you over here. If God be for us, that's the question you have to ask. Who can be against us? Okay, some of you sleep. Let me ask you over here. If God be for us, then who can be against us? Okay, let me talk to you in the balcony. Let me talk to you in the virtual church. If God be for us, who can be against us? And so, listen. Let them pass their bills. Yes, they smiled. Oh, baby, they smiled as they did it. Did y'all see the photo op? They smiled when he signed the bill into law. Yes, they acted as if they had won, but they don't know what we know. They don't know that our God is different than their God. If you're so convinced, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sorry to tell you, but if you're so convinced that we serve the same God, I really do feel sorry for you, because our ancestors knew their God wasn't our God. It's why, can I teach you something else here? It's why they indoctrinated us with their God, so that we couldn't learn, love, and lean on our God of liberation, light, and love. They don't know that we have a God who sits high but looks low, a God who hears the cries of the enslaved in Egypt, a God who saw the tears of mothers and fathers in Mississippi, a God who walked with Harriet, stood with Malcolm, prayed with Fannie, and marched with Martin, a God whom the hymn writer said, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. So let them celebrate their bill. Let them toast their power. Let them pass policies out of pain. But as for us, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to still keep doing boots on the ground. We still going to keep doing that. But we're going to continue to sing the Lord's song in a strange land. We will build beloved communities from the ruins. We will raise up prophets and protectors. We will still vote as if our lives depend on it, because it does. We will preach when they try to silence us. We will shout when they try to shame us. We will love each other when the world hates us. And we will rise again and again and again, because as children of God and friends of Black Jesus, our story is not over, because our people are not done. And our people are not done because our God is not finished. I hope you've enjoyed your worship service. May the Lord God bless you real good. I'm done now, but let me leave you with the words of the one who conquered death, stood up in power, and declared to every crooked system, every unjust law, and every oppressive bill. I heard Jesus say, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, catch this now, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So my brothers and sisters, I just stopped by to encourage you to fight on, just struggle on, even when your hands get tired. March on even when the road is rough. Preach on even when they shut the doors. Sing on even when your voice shakes. Vote on even when they try to stop you. Love on even when hate marches. Hope on even when the nights grow dark, because we serve a God who specializes in resurrection. We serve a God who turns lynching trees into liberty posts, a God who turns policy into protest, a God who takes bills meant to break us and uses them to build us. They may have passed one big unbeautiful bill, but we walk with one big unstoppable God. Our God is unstoppable. Do I have a witness here? Our God is unstoppable because our God, my God, your God, our God, here's what they don't like and what they don't understand. Our God cannot be vetoed. Our God cannot be filibustered. Our God cannot be signed into law. Our God cannot be recalled, and our God cannot be impeached. So don't you let this bill break your faith. Don't you let these politicians poison your praise. We serve a God who has never lost a battle. And when the weight gets heavy and your hope runs low, I have a charge for you. And the charge is to lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be lifted up, the everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Somebody may ask the question, as they ask, who is this King of glory? Well, let me tell you something. He ain't riding no motorcade. He ain't wearing a blue suit with a red tie and a big dumb red hat. He doesn't need a vote from the House of Representatives. He doesn't wait for approval ratings. Well, who is he? He is the Lord strong and mighty. He is the Lord mighty in battle. He's stronger than your struggles. He's mightier than your enemy. He's greater than your grief, and he still gets the final word. So stand tall, march on, keep praying, keep preaching, keep pushing, keep on, because our God is unstoppable, our Christ is undefeated, and our hope is still alive.